Hello, East Brunswick. I certainly hope that you're doing well, and more than anything, I certainly hope that you're safe. We've certainly been through a very challenging year with the pandemic, the economic uncertainty around us, and more recently, the bizarre weather events that all seem to have converged at the same time. But I'm hoping that most of this is behind us. We've all managed to work together as a community. We've helped each other, and so far we've fared much better than many of the towns around us, many of the states around us, and the counties. And I'm very, very optimistic that at the end of all of this, we are going to emerge as an even stronger community. As you receive your 21-22 property tax bill, I just wanted to take this opportunity to talk to you a little bit about the many ways in which our administration and our township council have acted in ways to provide the delicate balance between fiscal responsibility and providing the top-level services that we all deserve. We've truly done this as a team approach. That's how our government works, and it's enabled our community to benefit from the talents and the experiences of each one of your government officials. As you know, 2020 was a year like no other. The pandemic and the economic collapse that followed caused massive losses in revenues. And most of the early federal money that the town received never addressed lost revenues, as that money was set aside and provided for direct COVID-related expenses only. Fortunately, our property tax collection ratio, which has remained high, has been 99%, and strict control of our expenses have allowed us to operate without adding any debt. So this disciplined approach to financial management has actually allowed us to stabilize the tax rate as was promised, notwithstanding the massive revenue losses we had to sustain. If you look at the municipal portion of your tax bill, you'll see that the tax rate has not exceeded over an increase over 0.5% per year in the last several years. If you actually look at your entire tax bill, which would include the county and school taxes, our total tax rate increases have remained relatively flat, pretty much lower than the cost of living. And in fact, during the last 2 years, has remained at or below 1% per year. So for the average taxpayer, your total property tax increase for this year is going to amount to a whopping $7.20 on the year, or 60 cents per month. You should also be aware that the township is extraordinarily proud of our AA+ credit rating from Moody's. Now that's based on multiple factors: our low debt ratio, our strict financial controls, our high collection ratio, and the agency's review of our financial outlook based on our redevelopment plans and other plans for how the township is managed. And because of our extraordinarily good credit rating, our public schools and our fire districts often look to the township for bonding for their own capital needs, because we could bond and borrow at significantly lower rates than they can. This has saved an enormous amount of money for our residents, as those large capital projects would otherwise require a lot larger debt service each year. Despite the pandemic, we've also committed and were able to be successful in not firing or furloughing any municipal employee. In fact, what we did in many instances was we would reallocate staff to areas that opened up as areas of needs that were a byproduct essentially of the crisis that we faced together. A big thank you in order to do that goes to our East Brunswick Police Department, the Department of Public Works, the Planning, Engineering, and Construction Department, our Parks and Rec Department, Finance Department, and of course EBTV. They all worked uninterrupted during the pandemic, and they really never got a break. Additionally, despite the closure of the buildings, our senior center and our public library also never stopped servicing the community. They simply had to find new ways to reach our residents, and they did so. As you look around the town, life is starting to return to normal, or whatever we believe a post-COVID normal is going to look like. And I just want to give you a few examples of how your tax dollars are at work and are successful in achieving, success here. First, let's look at road work. There's probably no driving you could do in town without stopping at a detour. We've committed over $2 million per year to have roads repaved, and we've been able to accomplish at least 25 miles of road work over the last several years and 13 miles of bike lanes. As a result of our relationship with our state representatives and county representatives, we've received $500,000 every year in grants for the last several years for township roads coming directly out of the TTF, or Transportation Trust Fund money. This year's grant was used to repave Riva. Previous grants were used for Dunham's Corner Road, Ruse Lane, Old Stage Road, and next year, in fact, we've already got a commitment for that $500,000 to go towards repaving on Fern Road. We additionally received another $1.2 million as a freight grant to repave Edgeboro Road this year. If we didn't get that money, that cost, those millions of dollars, would have had to be borne by residents through property taxes. County has also come out and repaved miles and miles of county roads as well. As many of you know, we never closed our parks during the pandemic, and especially during the lockdown. Our park system is really the envy of many other towns around us. And as you know, during the lockdown, many people actually had an opportunity to discover some of the parks that are closest to their homes and recognize the beauty that exists right here in town, right at your fingertips. We will be adding another 2 new parks within the next year, one off of Fresh Ponds Road at the old Superfund site. And we're going to be opening up another park right on Farrington Lake, which is really pristine property with magnificent views of the lake. The rec department also added drive-in movies during the pandemic, virtual program, and even, when permitted, opened up Crystal Springs for a limited time during the pandemic. And again, this year with limited capacities, but we had to adapt to the constraints that were imposed upon us during the pandemic. But they were successful. We also plan to add 2 new sports this year. We're going to be building and have actually already configured a cricket area right on Bicentennial Park. We'll be looking at Heavenly Farms for a more permanent one. And we're also looking to add a venue for hockey in the area on 110 Tices where the redevelopment project is going to be going. There's about 7 to 8 acres that are dedicated for a public use. That's what we intend to put there. Our senior center and our library did manage to take their services and pivoted to a virtual format over the past year in order to connect with our citizens. And in fact, in many instances, attendance was even higher than when they had many of these programs in person. So while we're looking to return to in-person services, likely over the future, we've learned that probably going to need to work on some sort of hybrid program where those that aren't comfortable coming in person can do so virtually and have our in-person programs as well. This past year, we took much of our long-term debt and took advantage of the extraordinarily low interest rates and refinanced many of that debt in order to take advantage of those lower rates, which should translate to enormous savings for taxpayers as we reduce our finance charges. Our governor committed $1 million this past year in the 2021-22 budget for an expansion of our community arts center. This project in the end is expected to be financed through grants, fundraising, and institutional philanthropy, where and not through property taxes. All of our boards and commissions, almost all of them, are completely filled. We have great representation from all of the different groups throughout the township, and our boards and commissions are as diverse as our township. Our township employee health plan, many of you know, is a self-employed plan. And while I can't predict future costs, that's something that obviously in a self-funded plan is hard to predict, but our costs for the last 4 years have remained relatively flat, which has translated into lower costs and has allowed us not to see a massive increase in our taxes. Then this flat rate is inclusive of the year 2020. Also, despite the fact that we had an economic collapse around us, East Brunswick has been able to attract over 100 businesses per year over the last couple of years since taking office. This included, although slowed a little bit during the pandemic, but we saw an influx of businesses, something that we should be proud of, that East Brunswick is still attractive to business, even in the worst of economic times. So I can't close without talking a little bit about the pandemic. First, let me take a second to recognize and mourn for all of those who suffered or lost friends or relatives during the pandemic. That was extraordinarily unfortunate. We mourn all of their losses. Fortunately, when compared to other towns in the county, other towns even in the state, East Brunswick fared quite well. Our infection rate all along from the very beginning remained amongst the lowest in the county and in the state. And once vaccinations became available, our vaccination rate has remained amongst the highest. Somewhere right now, around 85–86% of our residents who are eligible are vaccinated. So, and this has been a team effort, but my team involves an inner circle, and I do want to take a second to recognize those people that are part of that inner circle. First, Business Administrator Joseph Crisculo, our Chief of Police Frank Lasacco, and our Director of Emergency Management Austin Kosick. That was my main team, and frankly, between the three of those people, there's over 100 years of experience in municipal government, so I think we had the right team supporting me and the residents of the township. Finally, I'd like to thank you, our residents, who followed the science, heeded guidelines, cooperated all along with township officials, took vaccines, paid your taxes, and most importantly, did what good neighbors do. We looked out for each other. We helped our family, we helped our friends, and that's, in the end, what truly is the definition of a community. And that is what makes me proud and thankful to be your mayor.